This is TC Daily and I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is our final show for 2022 and the final time that I'm going to be reminding you, please, to subscribe to our channel. You can do that on YouTube at youtube.com/TechCentral, and while you're at it, why not subscribe to our daily newsletter, techcentral.co.za/newsletter, and you'll get all the latest local and international tech news, including this show, delivered to your inbox every morning at 5 a.m. But before we all disappear on our Christmas holidays, we have one final interview for the year, and I'm very pleased to welcome Rob Godlonton, CEO of OneX, into the studio. Rob, it's great to see you. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you very much, Duncan. I really appreciate the opportunity leading up to Christmas to have a little chat to you and explain what we're doing at OneX and where we're going to. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, pleasure. Thanks for coming into the studio. I think many people in the IT industry know you quite well, or know your name at least. You've worked for some of the biggest companies in the space. I was actually having a look at your LinkedIn a bit earlier. You started your career at PeopleSoft.
Indeed. Well, so I actually started my career in as an accountant in Durban at Unilever.
My IT career,
100%. I had the opportunity living in the UK, and actually was implementing Oracle financials at the time, but as an accountant, and had the opportunity to join PeopleSoft as an implementation manager. And that's actually when the love for tech started back in 1996. So
was it around that time that Oracle bought PeopleSoft?
A little bit later than that, yeah. But there is a little story behind my career and Oracle buying PeopleSoft. So I worked for PeopleSoft from 96 to 2000, and then started my first business as an implementation partner. And we scaled up that business, and were fortunate enough to sell that business to an American company called Infogain. And my first experience of acquisitions, and I'll come back and talk about acquisitions and joiners a bit later. But from a PeopleSoft perspective, we built a business, and then Oracle bought PeopleSoft. And it was an interesting times there, because it actually created an opportunity for me to join another organization called Cedar Consulting, also in the PeopleSoft space. So that you're right. That was my love for tech and understanding of tech, and went through the Y2K bubble with PeopleSoft, and then got into the .com side of things. Also with PeopleSoft they were actually the first client server organization to move to the internet side of things. So PeopleSoft ahead of their times. And interesting, I'm not sure if you're aware that a lot of the leaders of PeopleSoft went on, after Oracle bought them, to be the founders of Workday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I often say to people, and probably get myself into trouble, and say, Workday is PeopleSoft on steroids, because what they did is they took time off and reflected on where the market was going, and so that's how they bought out a cloud platform in the enterprise resource planning space as Workday. So it is fascinating to see how people sort of build out new tech based on what's happening in the world. So
it was a hell of an acquisition back at the time that Oracle did. It was multi-billion-dollar, and back then that was a lot of money.
It was indeed, yeah.
And Oracle shut down the PeopleSoft name pretty quickly.
So interesting, Duncan, on the PeopleSoft side of things, the brand and the technology and the human capital space is still operating.
Is the brand still there?
The brand is still there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually they kept two brands, and the one is JD Edwards, which
I remember JD Edwards. Because PeopleSoft bought JD Edwards before Oracle, bigger fish, right?
So it's always fascinating, and it has been fascinating for me around acquisitions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But sitting there and the Craig Conway, who actually worked for Larry Ellison, and I think one of the things that people don't actually appreciate in our space is how many top leaders Larry Ellison produced over the years, because you got Tom Siebel, who from a CRM side of things in those early days came from Oracle. Mark Benioff, Salesforce, came from Oracle.
Oh, right.
Also one of Larry's lieutenants. But But going back to that, the PeopleSoft's bought JD Edwards with the hope of not then, the hope that Oracle wouldn't buy PeopleSoft because it had got so big already. But Larry being Larry acquired both of them at the time. Right. And the idea was to fuse the products together, and they did. They took a lot of the good learnings and good tech out of both JD Edwards and PeopleSoft, and built out Oracle Fusion. But they've still kept, specifically in two areas for PeopleSoft, in the higher education space, in the USA, PeopleSoft dominated, and in the human capital HR side of they dominated. And JD Edwards, I do believe, is still around and very strong in the supply chain and manufacturing side of things. But so it's fascinating, these companies, what they do.
Right, and you made your first foray into the IT services, the sort of system integrator market, I think, around the mid-2000s when you joined Dimension Data.
Yeah, so correct. I had the opportunity, and people often ask me why did I come back to South Africa? After spending 13 years in the UK, and it was really around wanted to make a difference already in South Africa. The quality of life, it's a phenomenal country. It's got amazing opportunities, and had the opportunity to join Dimension Data on the global sales side of things. So. And
still based in the UK?
So I started in the UK.
When you came back here?
And then came back with them. So the plan was to start there, and then I spent 4 years with Dimension Data. And I think the biggest learning that I would take out of that experience, and what the likes of Jeremy Ward and Doc Watson and the team had got right, in the early days they were obsessed with their clients. And I think probably my biggest learning from them, and that I've taken into plus OneX, is that client obsession, and they really did accelerate that, because in those days, on the back of Cisco, they did amazing things in the networking space for South Africa, and enabling businesses.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so you were there for about 4 years or so, and then I'm not sure if it happened immediately, but you then joined EOH. What capacity did you start at EOH?
So a very, very interesting question. So at the time, Asher Bobbitt, who's the founder of EOH, was looking to scale out the business, and because of my background in PeopleSoft and Oracle, I was due to join them to head up the Oracle business. But at the same time, Asher was talking to a gentleman called Andrew Krause, who was the sales director for Oracle. And he came across. So I went and looked after 4 businesses within EOH, with a view to acquiring more businesses and scaling out those businesses. So at the time we called it the Strategic Business Services within EOH, and that's those are the first 4 businesses that form part of my portfolio. That over a period of time we scaled out.
Okay. And you moved on to other roles within EOH over time. Just take us through very briefly your career history inside EOH.
Yeah, sure. So I started off with companies that were, there was a company called Bromide, which was in the infrastructure and managed services. There was a company called Cispro that was in the ERP side of things. And the strategy was to acquire good entrepreneurial businesses, bring them into EOH and to scale them. So my focus was that from day one, and over a period of time, we built that out, acquiring businesses like Belay in the Microsoft space, Airborne in the Microsoft space, one being in Gauteng, one being in Western Cape, and we built out the portfolio of technology businesses and scaled those businesses, and we scaled them through a combination of access to enterprise clients, and through those entrepreneurial people being able to build out their businesses on the platform, and that's how we scaled the business, probably 50% organically and 50% through acquisitions over the years, to scale out the ICT side of the business, which is what I grew out and became responsible for over the years.
Yeah. So you in effect, by the time you left EOH, you were running what became the IOCO IT services business.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So one of the challenges and lessons learned from the EOH perspective is that we ended up with too many brands. And the customers say, well, we want the services from EOH, but it was never an end-to-end service because it was so many different brands. And part of the strategy in the latter part that we drove, it was myself and a gentleman called Simon Joss, was to bring those businesses together under the one brand IOCA.
Okay.
And so we delivered on that as one brand. I'm very proud of that achievement. And it's, again, some of the lessons that I've learned, I've taken across to Plus OneX from that perspective, from the branding side of things.
Why did you end up leaving EOH in the end?
Very good question, Duncan. So, when you've been running hard for 10 years and as an entrepreneur at heart and working with these guys, I felt that it was the right time, and myself and Stephen sat down to move on.
Stephen van Coller had joined already when you...
Correct, yeah. So Stephen had been there for about 18 months where we worked together. So, we decided that, it was a different type of leadership needed for the organization. So, very fortunate that I was able to recharge the batteries and take 6 to 9 months out.
Did you see, was there a difference of strategy, a difference of agreement, a difference in approach to the strategy that you were looking to do and what Stephen was looking to do?
No, not really. No. It was just where the business was, and from where we were taking the business. The IOCA brand and the strategy was in place, and we they've driven that nicely. I'm very proud of what they've achieved under the IOCA brand. There's some great people there to taking it forward. Good.
So you were with EOH for a good 10 years or so. Were you shocked when you found out what was going on at EOH? The news broke about, I think when the Department of Defense Microsoft contract, I think that was in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, yeah.
And suddenly it became clear, and a lot of people in the market there'd been a lot of whispering in the market for many years that there was malfeasance going on at EOH. Suddenly it was in the open. State Capture Commission investigations. EOH appointed ENS Africa to dig up what happened in the public sector contracts, etc. Looking back at everything that's happened, were you shocked when you saw all of this stuff?
Yeah, so obviously, you're shocked, disappointed, and sad. We'd built a great business there, and again, lessons learned. On building the businesses. We ended up with too many legal entities, and controlling and managing what happens in so many different legal entities is difficult. And again, lessons learned for Plus OneX. It's one of the things that we don't do is take over the legal entities, because when you've got people with control over legal entities, those things happened, and it was very disappointing, very sad about what happened. But shocked when stuff came out at the Zondo Commission. So unfortunately, those were call it the Zuma years, and it's very disappointing. But again, if I go back and you got to learn from mistakes that people have made, and one of those was too many entities, too many brands, and that allowed people that were to do things that they should never have done.
Right. So was it chiefly, do you think, a governance problem at EOH?
It's a good question.
That it just that there wasn't central control over what was happening, and that people could go off and pay bribes to government officials and all this sort of stuff. Is this fundamentally a governance issue at EOH, that the top management lost control of what was going on inside the organization?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of having that visibility and control, which is important, and I think it's one of the key things that Reunert and other organizations have got right. And you have those controls, but if you have so many entities, which is the challenge that we had at EOH, getting visibility of them and having entrepreneurs doing things in those businesses is hard. So as part of one of the exercises with IOCA was to consolidate the number of entities, and just in IOCA we had 60 odd entities that we consolidated down to 12, 13 of those entities. So yeah.
It was a strategy that worked very well for EOH for many years, and I know it was led by Asher Bobot, buying companies with EOH scrip, getting companies involved. The share price was going up. The share price kept going up. In fact, it kept going up for years and years and years, and even many analysts were questioning whether this was a house of cards waiting to collapse. And in the end, it turned out it was a house of cards and it ended up collapsing. Do you think, I mean, if you look back at the way EOH was managed through the years that you were there and maybe before and after that, what do you think should have happened differently? Do you think that those acquisitions do you think there were too many acquisitions? Do you think that EOH should have consolidated them better? How could the organization have avoided getting into the mess that it eventually got into?
So very good question, and again, lessons learned there. So I think fundamentally the business model for EOH was right, and that was, if you look at it, you get top quality businesses, people that have run their businesses. You bring them on board into EOH, access to enterprise clients, access to working capital, and you allow them to scale their businesses. And people used to ask, well, how can you continue growing? But we were growing organically at over 50% and scaling up nicely. And to answer your question, if there weren't corrupt people, I do believe the business would continue to have scaled. Now, the challenge is when you've scaled up to 16 billion in turnover, and the market expects you to grow by 15-20%. That's hard. You've got to do other bigger acquisitions, and that's probably where, to answer your question, it was probably not the volume of acquisitions. It was the quality of acquisitions that, in hindsight, it's easy to look back and say, okay, well, should they have done some of those acquisitions? But I do believe that the model and what EOH was doing was the right thing. And I think a lot of people forget how we had scaled that business up to a substantial business. And I suppose the flip side of looking at it is that Stephen and the team, because of the debt side of things, have had to sell very good assets. So you can say, well, should we have acquired those? Those were good assets, and unfortunately, because of where the debt is, they've had to sell some of those assets.
Do you think more could have been done by the management to unearth and deal with the corrupt elements within the organization and what was going on, particularly in the public sector contracts? And was there organizational awareness of really what was going on in some of those contracts?
Yeah. So again, good question, Duncan. It's very very difficult. Because of the way the entities were set up to have unlocked that. Comment I do make to people is that those enterprise development partners that unfortunately were corrupt were enterprise development partners with competitors of EOH at the time. So the question does beg, if ENS had reviewed those ones, what would happen from that perspective? Yeah.
Lastly, on EOH, your thoughts on where the organization is today? Do you think Stephen van Coller has done a good job of rescuing the organization, and where do you think it's going? I mean, you must have a soft heart for the organization after having worked there for 10 years.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think that EOH's future is bright?
Yeah. So firstly, I mean, there are amazing people at EOH, and there are colleagues and people that are still there, and so. I wish the company and the brand and IOCO, all the best out in the market. So, Stephen's had a challenging job. He's there. He's been there now for 4 years. So, he needs to execute to his strategy. Like my shareholders at Reunert are expecting me from a plus OneX perspective to execute to my strategy. So, for now, I just wish him all the best and the teams that are there, because many of them. At EOH are colleagues that I worked with. So, I really do wish them the best.
Yeah, right. Well, let's move on then to talk about Plus OneX, which you founded about 2.5 years ago now. What was the genesis of Plus OneX? You left EOH, you spent, I think, 6 or 9 months thinking about what to do next, and then Plus OneX is what you decided to do. What was the genesis of it, and how did the relationship with Reunert come about?
Yeah, so the way that we created Plus OneX is, firstly, I was fortunate to have that time off, and the more I thought about it, I say to people, if you're fortunate to have time off, then you need your friends that ride bikes. I'm a big mountain biker, play golf. They need to have time off at the same time,
Right.
And this was pre-COVID. So when everybody was working from 8 to 5. Only the people that would ride a mountain bike, they want to ride at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, man, I'm not getting up that early. And so I had time off. And then the more I reflected on my experiences as an entrepreneur and building a business, and I remember my first days going around and trying to raise capital, and everybody said, it's a great idea, but what's your experience? Well, if I had the experience and raised capital, I wouldn't be asking for more capital. So I was, that stuck in my head. I've now got the experience of scaling businesses, and I was confident that I could raise capital from private equity players. The question was what, and the more I documented and sat down and around the lessons I learned building my own business, my lessons I learned back to earlier what I said about dimension data, that client obsession, and then the lessons that I learned about. And understood from an EOH perspective, getting entrepreneurs on a platform and allowing them to scale their business and creating opportunities to improve people's lives. The more I thought, I can't sit back and not do and help people in South Africa. So from a plus OneX perspective, my wish was to create a systems and a solutions integrator that was tech agnostic. And what do I mean by that? It's in South Africa, Dimension Data built their business on Cisco, Synthesis on AWS, Mint on Microsoft, and that makes sense. And I think it is an option and a way to build your business. But really, what I wanted to do is to build a business that was solving clients' problems. And yes, we would have all the right tech certifications, but I didn't want to be a pure reseller. And people often ask me, Rob, but who are you looking to be when you wanted to build out plus OneX? And I say, if you're looking for somebody, ultimately my dream is that we'd be the Accenture here in South Africa that is able to understand the client's problems, have the right people to deliver those solutions, and be South African, and deliver those solutions from here in South Africa. So that's sort of the why behind plus OneX, and really it is about the lessons that I've learned in the past and raising capital to build something.
Yeah. Now you often describe yourselves as a new age system integrator. What do you mean by that exactly?
So what I mean by that is the fact that we're not built to aligned specifically to one technology. Ultimately we look and we understand what the client's problems are and what are they trying to solve for their customers, and then we use the technology to enable that. So, for example, at Kia Retail, we're working with them on the digital media side. We're working with them on their software dev. We built their platforms for them, and we've helped them move to the cloud. But ultimately, what is their goal? Is how do we help them sell more cars? And that's where I'm coming from. Where as a solutions and systems integrator, new age just being we're utilizing the latest technologies without being saying, okay, well, you have to go AWS or you have to go Microsoft. They're unbelievable technologies. It's just working out how can we help our clients from that perspective.
So you're not looking to be a Cisco Gold partner or a Microsoft Gold partner and that sort of thing?
So we are in those examples. I mean, we've probably got one of the most certifications in Microsoft as an example. But
so you do work closely with the vendors as well?
We work very closely with the vendors, and you need those certifications. But if a client, like a large bank, is moving a lot of their applications to, in this case, it's to Microsoft Azure, we've got the certifications and we're helping them move their applications to the Azure cloud. At the same time, we're doing a similar exercise in AWS. So it is around what's your problem and the tech, and we are certified in those technologies.
So if I'm going to summarize it, you have more of an advisory role than a traditional system integrator.
So advisory, but the big difference is that we can then execute and implement, and that's what and that's why it's a bit tongue in cheek with Accenture, because they can execute and they've got global centers all around the world. I'm just saying we're a local provider that can give advice and then implement from that perspective.
Are there specific industries that you specialize in?
So yes, there are, and that's because of how we built out the business and the enterprise clients that we have. So. From a plus OneX perspective, going all the way back to scaling the business, it's around having business. What we've got is we've effectively got access to enterprise clients. We have platforms, which is basically our HR, finance, and then we have our black partners that are invested in us, which allow us to be over 51% black owned, 30% black female, which allow our joiners, as we call them, people that we acquire, come on board to deliver into the enterprise side.
Okay.
The first phase of that was a company called Nashua Communications, which, if you go all the way back to its history, was the Siemens business here in South Africa.
That's right.
Which was owned by Reunert. As part of us and Reunert being our investment partner, we used that business to scale out. We were very, very fortunate. That business had some great clients, both on the banking side of things, so the financial services, mining, and then in the university space. So long way of answering your question, but to say, from those are the core areas that we started the business on, and then we're able to lay on top. Yeah.
And you've made a number of acquisitions in the last little while. Maybe just very briefly take us through those.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, from an acquisition perspective, we call them joiners. And going back to my lessons go all the way back to that PeopleSoft Oracle. If an acquisition is acrimonious, it's never going to work. So it needs to be a win-win situation. So we actually want the businesses to join us and then scale out. Why did we need to do these acquisitions, or as we call them, joiners? Was to build out our services capability to deliver from our clients. Again, lessons learned there from day one brand, so plus OneX. So the first acquisition we did was a company called Data Media in the digital media space, so Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, and bringing that into the data side of things. So that's our plus OneX digital media capability. The next one was around, again, following our clients' needs. We built out our cloud business into the hyperscalers, but a lot of our clients were saying, well, what can you offer us and deliver for us here in South Africa? And hence, Triple H were the next one on the cloud space, and we've scaled out that. And then the third one, so there are actually five, but if I forget them, the third one was Code Maven in the software dev space. And that was, grown from just over a year ago, joining us as plus OneX software dev. They've gone from 90 to about 180 software dev consultants. Wow. Doing design, build, and operate on the software dev side. And then our last two are EUC Africa and the end user computing side, so around Citrix and Microsoft. And then all the way back, sorry, I missed the other one was the Reunert ICT business that was providing licensing and managed services within Reunert. So that's where we are as we are currently today, roughly about 350 people in the business providing those services.
And in terms of your acquisition strategy, where are the gaps that you...
So from a build-out perspective, the areas that we've got gaps in are in the data side of things. So we've got a small data business, but data. Somebody asked me, well, what are the top themes for FY 2023? And I think one of the big ones is around understanding data, both internally and then how to monetize it. So in the data space, we need to scale up, and then in the security space, we also need to scale up. So those are two that we've identified.
And what sort of a war chest do you have to make acquisitions? You're obviously part of Reunert. Alan Dixon was in the studio a couple of weeks ago, last week I think. Has he made Reunert's cash resources available for you to go on a buying spree? To what extent can you actually scale up through bigger acquisitions?
Yeah, so very good question. So, one of the benefits of being part of Reunert is access to the mergers and acquisitions capability, and also to the working capital, as you've called it, the war chest.
Yes.
And for us, we've got a business plan from a plus OneX perspective. As mentioned, data and security. But we are looking at and working very closely with Alan and the team around what other areas can we scale out there. So it's if I put the right business case in on the table, the investment from a Reunert perspective will happen.
Okay.
So
not
very
just small bolt-on acquisitions. You could do something big.
Yeah, so we could do something big, and that's that is the exciting part of why why we went with Reunert as our investment partner.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you two final questions. The one is pertaining to the IT industry, and the final one is pertaining to the country. I want to ask you about the state of the IT industry in South Africa. You've been in this industry for a long time. There seems to be, on one side of things, there seems to be a shortage of skills. On the other side of things, there's not much employment going on at the moment. Companies are really feeling the pressures. What's your sort of broad take on the state of the IT industry in South Africa right now and where it's going?
Oh, very good question. So, the state of the IT industry is very positive in South Africa. And part of the reason why, coming back with Dimension Data, was that one of the things I always found about South Africans, we make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting because, having lived in the UK, I say to people that the people go deep with the technology, and whereas in South Africa, we go broad and we get exposed to things a lot quicker, faster, and we try and we fail fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so exciting about South Africa. But the flip side of that is that people know on a global stage that South Africans make things happen, and therefore, going back to your thing, the demand for our technologists is going up. And one of the things that COVID taught us, you can work from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now competing on a global stage. So the challenge for us, going back to your thing, there is a skill shortage. In my opinion, there's a work experience and an experience shortage, mm-hmm. as opposed to qualification experience. And I think we've got unbelievable institutions, universities, technicons, and then we've got people investing in organizations like We Think Code, Code Lady, I think it's Code Lady, or
mm-hmm.
Girl Code, sorry.
Right.
There are lots of institutions and people that are investing in qualifications. Our challenge is, as an enterprise and as an industry, mm-hmm. is how do we give them that experience? Because everybody's so busy, they're under pressure. So we've been working with some financial institutions to build out what we're calling our work experience platform. And that's really, so Morgan, who heads, and Darby, who head up our software dev business, they call it the missing middle, because mm-hmm. it's how do we get people that are qualified to be experienced software dev engineers. And we need to build out that work experience. And so ultimately what we're working with with three of the banks where they're giving us pieces of work to fulfill. So it's not quite outsourcing, it's a partnership model. And what we're doing is we're putting young grads onto those programs with our experienced people to deliver that. And after 6 months, those people have got good experience. And that's the real challenge we have
mm-hmm.
in South Africa. I think with the digital economy that we have, people have got access to it, but how do we get that experience? And I'm a big believer in what do we do in that space, and we're working with the likes of Clickertel, Peter de Villiers, mm-hmm. As well. We've got some great initiatives, and that's why I'm very excited about the future of IT in South Africa.
Okay. Now, what about the country as a whole? We're sitting recording this. We've got stage 5 load shedding going on. Makes it very difficult to do business. You're positive about the outlook for the IT industry. What about the country more broadly?
So more broadly, I'm a true South African. So I'm going to look at the glass half full, and I just believe that here as South Africans, we just make things happen.
Except electricity.
Except electricity, but even then, if you look at you said you had Alan from Reunert
yes.
In here, and if you look at Reunert, there's a whole lot of stuff we're doing in renewable energies,
yes.
as one of the segments. And going back to it, throw a problem at a South African, we'll find a solution and we'll make it happen. So whilst we are going through some tough times, around political tough times, we're going through some tough times around load shedding. But as South Africans, I'm optimistic, and that's why I came back 15 years ago to make a difference. And I'm sure we'll make a difference, and we'll see through it. We'll make a plan. That's for sure.
Rob Godlonton is founder and CEO of OneX. Thank you so much for being our final guest on TC Daily for 2022. Have a great break, and we'll catch everybody in the new year. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Duncan. All the best.
Thank you.